Hey guys, it is Chris from Deus Ex Machina, and I'm going to admit that the title of this video was a little on the clickbaity side, but I felt it was important because A, it's accurate, but it's not exactly applying to what you think. Now, Deus Ex Machina started in 2007 as a device in order to help publish Amethyst. It has expanded beyond that to publish several different systems, some novels, and of course our most successful product, which is Ultramodern 5 for 5th edition D&D. And 4 years ago, I guess it was 4 years ago, we started a Kickstarter for an update for Amethyst, which was a re-release of the original books in color for multiple systems, and then a sequel book that was going to follow in the Amethyst line for those very same systems. When I refer to saying I'm quitting, I'm not referring to the company, I'm not referring to my writing, and I'm not referring to the Kickstarter. Instead, it's referring to the fact that throughout this entire system, this entire history of this entire channel in the game, I've always had a day job. Most people in the industry have multiple jobs. Role-playing, doesn't matter how successful their products are, they have a primary method of employment. Sometimes it's not relating to that field, and it was for me. I've been working in retail for a very, very long time. And throughout this Kickstarter, I've actually moved through 4 jobs, all in the fields of retail. And to be perfectly honest, there have been situations where I felt that had to come first because I had to be a responsible adult. And this is a message to people who think that they have to put away childish things in order to be a responsible adult. And maybe that may be true, especially if you have a lot of bills or you have children. Obviously, there are certain things that have to be more important, and satisfying those needs are incredibly important. A couple other things happened in the last few years. When I started the Kickstarter, I was in a relationship, but it was not a permanent long-term relationship. It allowed me a lot of free time. Since then, I've got into a new relationship, which is very permanent. We're engaged now. And so that's going to eat up some of my time. So you combine 40 plus hours a week at retail plus relationship and personal responsibilities, and suddenly I didn't have a lot of time to produce content. But I was still compelled to complete that content, and we were able to put out quite a few products. But the problem for me is that I was not putting out product in the rate that made me happy, and there were several mistakes that have happened in the last few years, both in regards to the company and specifically to the Kickstarter, that I wanted to address now. Considering the fact that when we ran our Kickstarter, and I'm in Canada, Kickstarter had only come to Canada 3 or 4 months prior. There was not this machine of economy around gaming and Kickstarter like it is today. My campaign would not have succeeded today if it ran. It didn't have the production. It didn't have the name recognition I think that I had now. I wasn't asking for a lot. I was asking for 8,000. We got to 10, which was really solid. We didn't have a lot of backers. We only had maybe 140 backers total that we had to answer to. And we're seeing campaigns now running with 10, 15, 20,000 backers on games that are incredibly successful. And the course question is, why am I not moving forward with that? Why am I not accelerating the Kickstarter that I currently have to make sure it's resolved before I move on to anything else in the future? And that's exactly the point, and that's been my problem. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, Ultramodern 5 came out. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago. Ultramodern 5 came out, and it became our most successful product, outselling every single thing we've put out combined. When Ultramodern came out, we went to Copper in a day, Silver in 3 days. We went to Electrum by the end of the week. We were Gold in a month. We were Platinum in 3 months. I should have dumped everything in my life for that. Not my relationship, mind you, of course, but most certainly I should have dumped my job. I should have sold my car. I should have went full time into writing and supporting that venue. And I didn't. And that will remain the biggest regret of the last few years of my life, because I felt so honor bound to stick with my job. I had a car I really liked. The idea of selling it was completely foreign to me. And if I could go back in time, I would tell my younger self, like, cars are not important. What you create is more important. Get rid of the bloody car. And I would have called that person insane. I was like, I spent, 5, 6 years paying this car, making it look all pretty. It mattered for something, and it doesn't. To quote Tyler Durden, the things you own end up owning you, and I should have dropped it. As it is, I couldn't sell the car this fall, so it's going back up for sale again in the spring. But the point with the matter is the fact that I think the reason why was because I felt bound to these bills, bound to these things, but I should have just dumped them and focused on getting the Kickstarter resolved. And yeah, it might have been sustainable. I might have been able to live off of my writing. As it stands now, I feel as if I am doing it too late and I'm playing catch up. And that's a problem I'm always going to suffer from, is always feeling late to make those decisions. I take too long to decide. But when it comes to the Kickstarter, yeah, the mistakes have been made. And that's something I'm going to resolve. And one of the things I resolved is that tooth and nail. I walked away from my retail job about a month ago, and to the effort to concentrating full-time in writing, so that no matter what happens, I'm going to make sure that these responsibilities are met, that my creative manifestations get expressed and get out there for people to see and encounter and enjoy, and hopefully maybe I make enough money in order to make it work. And it helps the fact that my car got paid off, and then right off the bat, hey, I'm trying to sell it just so I can stay more of an unemployed bum as I try to make my writing sustainable. And I have a few friends in the industry that are writers that are sustainable on their writing, but it's not a lot. Most of these guys have to pull other jobs, and a lot of times it's because they have families. Thankfully, I have a fiance that pulls very good income, so we're in a point where technically the responsible thing for me is to stay in my day job that pays and go on from there, but I'm taking that chance. And one of the reasons I'm taking that chance is because I need to finish this Kickstarter. Now, I have said the fact that I wanted this thing out at the beginning of the year, and no one is more aware of my commitments and my false promises than me. I think that in the future, if we ever do this project again, which I'm pretty confident we might, that we'll go at it a lot more professionally, and I'll also make sure that I'm not held tied down to something else that's going to eat up 40 hours of my day. But if I was, then the campaign would have to have been $40,000 in an effort to pay for my lifestyle to live for the next year, to write Amethyst and write Ultramodern and do that full time. And yet I had that indication when Ultramodern 5 blew up online. I should have taken that indication, but I didn't. I used that as a way to pay off bills and spend it on things that I probably shouldn't have. So first of all, to those people who run Kickstarter or is aware of my Kickstarter, the Amethyst Kickstarter was not for one book, but for 10 or 13 books over the course of several years. That's mistake number one. I probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have stuck to one system and maybe adopted one other. But one of the reasons why we decided to go with the campaign and support multiple systems was the fact that we were hoping on attracting as many people as possible. Now, it should be noted that ultimately my loyalty was to support 4th edition and 5th edition and Pathfinder, and that was the core system. But then somebody came on and pushed us to do 13th Age, so we did 13th Age, and then Savage World, and then Fate Core, and every one of these added to the length of the campaign. So there's lots of you who's like, I'm not interested in Savage World, I'm not interested in Fate Core, I just wanted the 5th edition book. And you had to wait 2.5 years to get that book because we were working on the other ones. And that was mistake number two. We reboot every single core system with a new book, where we should have just used the baseline as a template and copy pasted and simply sent out the book so all the core books were identical. But they're not. The core books are all wholly unique. The Savage World book is split up into 2 books. The Contestants book is 500 pages, and the Fate Core book is only 300 pages because we were playing with the artwork. We were making the artwork much more expansive. Quintessence has a full color backdrop, which the other books didn't have. So we were constantly enhancing and doing that, but all that added more time onto the whole equation, right? I do 13th Age, Pathfinder, 4th edition, 5th edition. Chris Dilson does Savage World and Fate Core. And every single time we do one of those systems, we have to stop and retrain our brain to learn the new system. You can't just keep one system in your brain. You literally, it's almost like I have to reboot my brain to learning a new system. So for a long period of time, I was writing 5th edition, and then I have to default my system down to go Pathfinder, and then 4th edition, and a lot of times I have to reread the entire rule book again. A book that I've played and read and memorized, but I have to read the entire system again. So my brain doesn't confuse the system between others, because I made that mistake where I've added a rule and someone says that's not for that rule system, that's for something else. So that was one of the other big mistakes. So like I said, one of the things going forward is that we're going to make sure that we're sticking just 2 or 3 systems. Now, if Chris wants to continue doing Fate Core Savage World, I'll continue to support that. But if he doesn't want to pursue the project after Factions is over, we're not going to be supporting those systems. And when someone asks, it's unfortunate, why are you doing that? And it comes down to simple revenue. The 5th edition products that we put out are, they're not even in the same ballpark of the sales success of 5th edition. And that's the honest to God truth. Ultramodern 5 has sold more than any other book we've sold combined. So when everyone says how successful Fate Core Savage Worlds are, they can be, but the third-party market is just not selling as well as 5th edition. That's just not. My loyalty to Pathfinder will still stay there. I might still write for 4th edition come in the future, but it's really going to be sticking with 5th edition for the foreseeable future after Factions is over. So we spent 2.5, 3 years just re-releasing the original book in full color for various different systems. And then we had to write the new book for various different systems. But we were under the rules today. I put down that under no circumstances were we going to make new content for each book. So the publisher files that we made are going to stay consistent through all of them, and we are on a commandment that we are not allowed to modify the fluff, so that every one of the faction books will look exactly the same. And some people might look at that and go, well, I like the fact that each one's a little different. I go, yeah, but it's taking too long. And it's been frustrating to me because we spent 5 or 6 months putting out a book when it should have just been a month and a half. But unfortunately, it does take a long time to write these systems. So 5th edition Factions, which is the Amethyst Factions, which was the ultimate core of this 4-year-old Kickstarter, is done. It's been written. But I've been banging my head against another hurdle that's happened recently, and that's been artwork. All of our artwork is done by one person. We don't farm out to other people, but when there's an issue with it, if there's delays within the artwork, there's nothing. I have no fallback. I don't have the money to pay for another artist, and Amethyst is as much tied to Nick Greenwood's visual style as is my writing style, so it wouldn't feel right moving away from that. But the problem is the fact that 5th edition Factions is done, Pathfinder is about 25% done, and neither of these products are any closer to coming out because the artwork is simply not there. And it's been frustrating because it's been like this for about 4 or 5 months. And it's caused some stress on our side because if I had all the art assets, I could throw it into the template and release Quintessence in a week and a half. That's how quick the turnaround is once the art assets are in place. As it is, everything else in the layout is basically done. And we'll go through that. So okay, here is one such file. This is chapter 6. Now this image right here is just a place marker. It's actually not the image that's going to be in place. Plus it's going to be blended in a bit better. But this one is 22 pages. Ignore the page numbers here because they're going to be completely inaccurate. They're just going to be jumping around everywhere. And this is just one such chapter. It's a massive expansion of the region of Central Canum. And that's just one example. Here we have another chapter. This is the same chapter. Once again, you'll see the same image there. And this one is 22 pages. And there's a lot of content, weapons, technology, more power armor, vehicles. And once again, one thing you'll notice, of course, is the lack of artwork. None of the art assets are in place in these products. We have a module at the end, a full module. It's a 44-page adventure, and that's before artwork goes in. So it's a very large campaign guide. We have an adventure chapter, we have a monster chapter, we have 4 chapters on locations, East, West, Heartland, and South America. We have a chapter on magic, a chapter on the darkness of Ixandar, a chapter on saints, and a chapter on the positive side of the Atracana magic, chaos, all the fey creatures, and then an introduction chapter with framing fiction. We're looking at about 350 pages before art assets go in, which means we're probably looking at 400 to 450 pages when we're finally finished. So suffice to say, it's going to look really good. The content's going to be really good, but the important thing is that it's also going to look the same. I'm writing Pathfinder directly in the publisher file, so I don't have to mess around with having to copy and move stuff over. I know what I'm taking out and what I'm putting back in. So that's going to be one piece of good news, is the fact that since all we're waiting for is art assets, once those art assets are done, I can move forward and get those products done. But like I said, going back on it, it doesn't excuse the issues at hand. And the issues at hand was the fact that we spent too much time with this Kickstarter. It was a very complicated production. Now, that did mean that, once again, going back to what I said earlier, we did make mistakes. We put out too many books. Like I said, there's 10 books for this Kickstarter. We should have just pushed for just re-release of the ones we had, and then for maybe did Amethyst Factions as a separate Kickstarter. But from people's perspective, we've been running this Kickstarter for 4 years and go, you haven't closed the Kickstarter yet? And they go, yeah, well, it's 13 books. But the problem is, of course, is that some people backed just Factions. I think about 15, 20 people backed Factions, which means that 4 years later, they haven't gotten a book. The vast majority of people, though, backed the complete package, which means they got the base books and they're getting everything. Some people backed the $70 option, which gave them everything, which means they got Ultra Modern and they got Apex and they got Neurospaz to 5th edition, so they've been continuously getting product. So there are some people that definitely paid out. And there's some people who also paid for the art dump, which hasn't actually fulfilled yet, but that's coming actually really, really soon. But yeah, there were certain mistakes. We should have just released one book. We shouldn't have supported all the systems that we did, but sometimes I think maybe we wouldn't have succeeded at our Kickstarter if we weren't supporting 13th Age or Savage World. I seem to think not, because of the sales in the 13th Age Amethyst really weren't that great. I'm really proud of the set, and I know some people who are in the know that it's a good book. We were backed by people who wrote 13th Age, so it's one of those things where, yeah, you know, they're supporting. I mean, I love the system. I just wish it sold better. It's 13th Age is just not a very popular system. We are supporting too many systems. If we put out 5 books and they're all 5th edition, it wouldn't be terribly difficult. That's why I was able to release Apex and Neurospasta and Amethyst Quintessence so quickly between each other, because they're very easy to adapt to 5th edition. But that does mean the fact that I want to be able to move on to other projects. I want to be able to put this to bed, and I don't want to short sell anyone about what we're doing. We are Amethyst is going to continue on. It's going to continue with Amethyst Factions. They're not going to be individually booked. There's going to be Amethyst Factions for 5th, for 4th, for Pathfinder, 13th Age, Savage World, and Fate Core. And then I am hard committed, especially since I am not pulling a paycheck as of the end of this year. It'll be I'm doing some other work with somebody else, and so as of the end of the year, I will have absolutely zero income coming in, unless of the income I'm pulling in from my writing. And that's going to be really frightening for me, because I have always had a job somewhere, and I haven't had to answer to anyone. So that's why I felt I needed that impetus. I needed that pressure to saying, you know, don't do other things. This is quite literally the only way you will survive. And I think it's necessary that I take that step in order to produce this content. So, as I said, Factions is done. We also have some artwork, which we have finished, which we'll show you here. Here's some of our sketch work, which we're working on. And we can see here some of the illustrations that Nick's been working on. And we've been, sketching some work for the new book. A lot of these have been finalized, thankfully, but there's still a lot more illustrations to come. Some of these are chapter starts, some of these are monster images, and other images decided to play around, but some really just impressive stuff. So here are some of our illustrations from Nick. And despite the illustrations you've seen, this just scratches the surface of the illustrations that are required for the main book. So I say we're delayed because we're lacking a lot of art assets. It's because we actually still need about 20 or 30 more on top of this, and I may be showing a story, it might be closer to 40 or 50. Which brings us to the future. So, as I said, we're committing ourselves to making sure Faction gets done, even to the point where I said I have walked away from my day job in order to make sure that this project gets completed and that Amethyst Factions gets released. But after Factions is resolved, what do we do next? Well, obviously, it's going to be vitally and critically important that I continue writing in a timely fashion. And problem is, I'm very late to the game because even though Ultramodern came out 2 years ago, we came out with Apex and Neurospastic, which both went gold. I think Apex is gold. Neurospastic, I think, is still Electrum. But I think that was pretty close to going gold as well. Quintessence did very well. So we want to continue supporting 5th edition, and that's to include some new products coming to the table, not the least of which will be, once again, following up with another Amethyst book. But before we do that, we want to work on returning back to Ultramodern and giving it a really good upmarket pump up. Something that's really good, something that's dynamic and colorful, a much larger book with more content. Basically, Ultramodern 5 version 2.0. And that's going to include the Ultramax rules fully incorporated, a lot more traditional rules, going over and fixing up a lot of the mistakes and errors that people have pointed out. At no point does this mean we're going to invalidate your original Ultramodern game. That's absolutely not going to happen at all. Instead, it's about trying to take that and make it the best version of itself. I've already promised that we will continue to support the original Ultramodern, and that anyone who gets that will be able to acquire Ultramodern 2.0 at a reduction. But for the Kickstarter, this is something that we are trying to make and see and make sure there's support. However, one of the elements that we want to use that for is to try to peel that system out and make new systems and new settings, because Neurospastic and Apex did very well, and I want to continue playing that. And some people really wanted steampunk, and we did a little thing on that quite a few months ago about what other systems we could support, and we got a big ton of support for steampunk. I love giant robots. I want to play with that. So to do that, we want to create a new, much more expansive Ultramodern system, and that is involving something called Affinity, all within the Ultramodern system that brings some new mechanics to the table. And so this Kickstarter will be to eventually fund this new Ultramodern reboot, and then also hopefully funding these 3 different systems. And the more money we make, the more budget and more art assets we can put into it and making a very, very good book. Then after that, on top of that, I'm working on a board game. I can't really discuss it into because it's actually working with something else on the project. That's something else I've been doing. Another board game I was working on kind of went on the back burner as I started focusing on trying to get Factions done. Now, some people are also asking what the future is with the products that we are supporting. Like I said, 5th edition is the future. I'm as of Factions, I will be dropping 13th Age and 4th edition. Savage World and Fate Core will depend on Chris Stilson. Pathfinder will continue for now. We don't have any plans to support Starfinder as of yet, or the new edition of Pathfinder. That'll really depend on how popular they are. We might, I don't know. A lot of times I feel whenever I write these other systems, I'm being pulled away from 5th edition content, which can sell a lot better. So that's going to be what is on the docket. So right now, just to make sure you guys are aware of, I've walked away from my day job. I'm going to be writing full time, at least for the next 8 to 10 months, in an effort to ensure that all of this content is released. That includes Factions for all those systems we support, these other projects I'm working on, and then potentially, hopefully in the future, another Kickstarter to help fund Ultramodern, and further down the road, going back to Amethyst. We still have 4 other Amethyst books planned just for the regions, just for one for Europe, for Africa, for Eastern Europe, and then the rest. Those are all projects that we have done. A lot of it's been written. A lot of people don't realize that Amethyst was based on a campaign that lasted 11 years, and the first 2 books only occupy the first 2 years. So there is a lot of stuff we can get to, and that's the reason why I'm walking away from my day job to write full time in order to produce this stuff for people. So to sum up, this video is an apology that I have let this campaign drag on too long. I have let this company miss a lot of opportunities because I put material possession and adult responsibilities in front of following my dream and following what I want to do. And I had a couple encounters with some, I say, celebrities where they really encouraged me to say, you know what, at the end of the day, you have to do what you want to do. Because then I'll be 60 years old and I'll say, look at the regrets I had. And I don't want to live my life with regrets. So my advice to you people is that if you want to be a writer, then be a writer. If the car is holding you down, then sell it, right? If a relationship is holding you down, then break up. Now, thankfully, I don't have that, but I still have the car and I still have bills. And for me, I want to walk away from those bills, walk away from that car, walk away from anything. Because at the end of the day, I want to be a writer. And that's what it is. That's what it should have always been. And there were too many times in the last few years where I got swayed away based on potential future revenue, responsibilities. Look how nice this car can be. Look how nice this house could be. But at the end of the day, I gotta stick with my writing. So that's what we're going to be doing. Thank you for listening to this ramble. Because when I don't write something down, I will run off the mouth until it's over. And there will be now monthly updates to the Kickstarter starting today, every single month until we're done. The art upload is going to happen this month. We'll be updating artwork every single month until everything gets completed. And I'm committed to making sure this project gets done so we can move Deus Ex Machina to the next level. All right, guys? See you later.